Most people remember the Halloween of their childhood as a warm blur of pumpkin buckets, cheap costumes, and the sticky smell of candy wrappers. Mine is different. When I think about Halloween, my mind doesn't go to orange leaves or carved pumpkins. It goes to the color white. The Halloween when everything was buried under a freak snowstorm. The Halloween I stopped believing the world was predictable. The Halloween. A stranger followed 3 kids through the dark, through the cold, and right to our doorstep. But before all of that, life felt normal. I was 11 years old, growing up in a quiet Ohio neighborhood where all the streets curled together like a maze. My cousin Leo lived 2 streets over, and our best friend Mikey lived right at the corner where the sidewalk always cracked like loose puzzle pieces. We were inseparable that year, 3 kids who thought they were braver than they actually were. My mom still swears the storm came out of nowhere. The weather guys said light flurries. Instead, by late afternoon, snow was falling thick as cotton balls and settling fast. School had let out early, and kids ran around the yard making snow angels on top of leaf piles. Parents muttered about global warming and strange winters. The sky looked bruised purple, heavy with clouds. Usually our Halloweens were chilly, sure, but never snowy. Snow was for December. Snow was for Christmas. Snow was not for walking around with plastic pumpkins and begging strangers for Kit Kats. My mom almost called the whole thing off, but Leo's mom convinced her we could still go. If the parents followed behind us in their cars with the headlights on, I didn't mind. Having a personal escort felt kinda cool, like we were famous or something. We bundled up, me in a pirate costume zipped under a big puffy coat, Leo in a skeleton onesie, and Mikey dressed like some video game character with a plastic sword he kept dropping in the snow. We shuffled from house to house, the snow squeaking under our boots. Porch lights glowed warm in the storm, and families laughed louder than usual, like they were trying to chase away the weirdness of the weather. That's when we first saw him. He stood completely still beside a tall black mailbox at the end of Walnut Drive. His long coat was dusted with snow, stiff at the shoulders, but what made him look like something from another world wasn't the coat. It was the mask. An old-fashioned plague doctor mask. Long curved beak, dark round eye holes, the kind you see in history books or at creepy antique stores. I didn't think it was real at first. I thought maybe it was a decoration someone put out. But when a car drove by, the headlights flashed across him, and I saw his head tilt just slightly, following the car with a slow, deliberate motion. I stopped walking. So, is that a costume? Mikey whispered. Leo nudged me. Probably some dude trying too hard. But none of us moved. The snowflakes stuck to the beak of the mask, melting and running down like tears. The man didn't wave, didn't nod, didn't do anything, just stood there, stiff and watchful, as if he'd been waiting a long, long time. My mom's SUV rolled up behind us. She lowered the window. "You boys doing okay?" "Yeah," I answered quickly. "Just cold." We kept walking. And as we stepped onto the next driveway, I told myself he was just some weird guy in a weird costume. It was Halloween after all. But then we left the next house and he was there. Not at the mailbox anymore. This time perched on a porch railing 2 houses down, as if he'd just been dropped from the sky. His head tilted toward us again. Snow was already building on his shoulders. Leo swallowed. Did he move that fast? "No way," Mikey said. "He must have walked over." But he hadn't. We would have heard him. The snow was too thick, too loud under boots. And he was just there. House after house, street after street. We'd come out with candy bags half full and nerves half shot, and he'd be waiting somewhere new. Behind a tree. At the end of a driveway. By a lamppost. Close enough to be seen, but never close enough for the parents to notice. The sky darkened fast. Our moms got spooked by the roads icing over and finally called it a night. They honked, yelled for us to hurry, and drove off to pick up the younger kids. They said we could finish the last street alone. Just one more block. We were 11. We thought we were invincible. But as soon as the cars turned the corner and disappeared, the man moved for the first time. He stepped forward. Then he followed. The crunch of snow behind us was slow, steady, and deliberate. And I realized, with a coldness that didn't come from the storm, that we were alone. More alone than we'd ever been. We didn't talk at first. I think all three of us hoped that if we ignored the sound of his footsteps behind us, they'd stop. But they didn't. Crunch. 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 The sound carried through the snow-heavy air like something sharp scraping the edge of silence. I turned around once. He was maybe 30 feet back, walking straight down the center of the street toward us. Long strides. Slow. Determined. Snow smearing his coat white. The beak mask pointed directly at me. "We need to go home," I whispered. Leo shook his head. "My house is closer. Just cut across Birch Lane." "No way," I hissed. "My house is right past the corner." "Mine's closer," Leo insisted. "And my mom's expecting me first." Mikey started. Crunch, crunch. We all shut up. The man kept walking. "Okay," Leo said, voice shaking. "We stick together. We go to the closest house. Whoever's is closest." We froze. None of us knew whose house was technically closer from where we were. The swirling snow made the street look unfamiliar. Every house blended with the next. For a moment, panic got so loud in my head I couldn't think. Then an idea hit me. "Cut through the Ramirez's backyard," I said. "It's a shortcut to Pine Street. Then we can split toward our houses from there." "Smart," Leo agreed. We hurried into the snow-packed yard, boots punching footprints deep into the white. The chain-link fence at the end wasn't tall, but climbing it with numb fingers was a nightmare I scrambled over first, dropping into a puff of snow on the other side. "Hurry," I urged. Leo climbed next, slipping once but landing okay. Mikey threw his sword over the fence before climbing after it. I turned to check the street. The plague doctor stood at the edge of the yard, not running, not climbing, just watching. Even worse, our footprints made a perfect trail straight to the fence we'd crossed. "We gotta move!" I shouted. We darted through the second yard, weaving between a playset half buried in snow and a row of hedges sagging under the weight. The cold stung my nose, my eyelashes, my throat. My breath came out in panicked white clouds. We reached Pine Street. Halfway home, we made it to the sidewalk when Mikey grabbed my sleeve so hard I almost fell. "Look." Behind us, footprints crossed the Ramirez yard. Deep, heavy, precise. He was climbing the fence. "Go!" Leo yelled. We took off running. My boots slipped a little with every step. Snow swirled around us like a living thing. The street lamps were dim under the storm, making everything look like a washed-out dream. "Don't stop!" I shouted, but Mikey did. His boot got stuck in a pile of snow where the plow had passed earlier. He tripped forward, landing face first. Leo and I spun around. "Get up!" Leo screamed. "I'm trying!" Mikey yelled, kicking frantically. The plague doctor stepped onto Pine Street, still slow, still steady, but closer. I grabbed Mikey under his arms and heaved him up. Leo dragged him from the other side. Together we lunged forward again. Then something happened that chilled me more than the winter air. The man stopped following. He just stopped. He stood still in the middle of Pine Street, head tilted. Watching. Why? Why stop now? Leo whispered. "He's waiting." "For what?" Mikey choked out. I didn't want to know. We cut across the cul-de-sac and spotted my street ahead. A few porch lights glowed amber through the storm. I waved my arms wildly. "Dad, Mom, someone!" I yelled, even though I knew nobody was outside. The houses waited silently. Too silently. We made it to my yard. My house loomed out of the snow like a blurry, familiar shape. Warm windows, Christmas lights still tangled on the porch from last year. My lungs burned from running. "Almost there!" I yelled, but when I turned around, he was gone, just gone. No footsteps, no dark silhouette, no long coat whipping in the wind. Nothing but falling snow. "Where'd he go?" Mikey whispered. Leo shook his head slowly. "People don't just vanish." I didn't have an answer. My mind raced in circles. Did he take a different street? Had he ducked between houses? Or was he standing unbelievably still somewhere we just couldn't see? We hurried inside my house, slamming the door behind us so hard a picture fell off the wall. Snow melted in puddles around our boots as we peeled off our coats. "You guys sure you're okay getting home?" I asked. Leo nodded. "We'll go together." I watched them run back into the storm, silhouettes swallowed by white. Later that night, as I slept on the couch to be closer to the front door, just in case, something woke me. A knock. Soft. Gentle. Almost polite. My dad opened the door. Nobody there. Only footprints. Footprints leading away into the woods. Time tries to sand the sharp edges off frightening memories. That's what people say. They claim the mind softens the things that once pierced it. I wish that were true. The man in the snow mask, because that's what we started calling him, never left my thoughts after that Halloween. Not in a haunting way. More like a shadow your brain carries even in daylight. But nothing happened. Not for years. The police came the next morning. My dad told them someone had knocked. They looked at the footprints, shook their heads, said probably a prank. Probably kids. Probably nothing. But they didn't see the way the prints were spaced. Long strides. Even. Measured. Not kid footprints. I tried telling myself it was over. Life moves on when you're young, and soon enough middle school replaced monsters, and video games replaced nightmares. Mikey moved out of state at the end of 6th grade. Leo's family moved across town. We still hung out sometimes, but the tight knot of childhood loosened. And yet, every Halloween, I felt something sit heavy in my chest. A kind of dread, like a pressure drop before a storm. The next few years were quiet. Uneventful. I grew taller, went through awkward phases, found new hobbies, got into high school, got my license. I even convinced myself the plague doctor man had been some strange adult pulling a creepy joke. Then something small, almost insignificant, happened the fall of my junior year. I was cleaning out the basement freezer looking for old popsicles when I found a plastic grocery bag shoved behind a box of frozen waffles. Inside the bag, a plague doctor mask. Not a cheap Halloween store plastic one. A real one. Leather. Heavy. The kind that would cost someone real money. My hands froze. Literally and figuratively. Had it been there the whole time? Why would my parents have it? Or had someone put it there? How long it had been hidden? I brought it upstairs. "Mom," I said, holding it up. "Where'd this come from?" She stared at it, confused. "I've never seen that thing in my life." My dad looked up from the kitchen table. "Where'd you get that?" "Basement freezer," I said quietly. He frowned. "Why would something like that be down there?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him, heart pounding in my throat. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured the mask coated in snow, the beak dripping meltwater, the man's silent figure behind us. My mind spiraled with possibilities. Had he been in our house? Had someone brought it in? Was it just some old prop? Was I overthinking everything? I didn't tell Leo, I didn't tell Mikey, who I still messaged occasionally. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but the next day, on my way home from school, I saw something that made all the old fear come rushing back. A set of footprints in the first fresh snow of the year. long, even, familiar, leading into the woods behind our neighborhood. The same woods the footprints disappeared into that night when I was 11. I followed them. I don't know why. Curiosity? Stupidity? Some part of me needing an explanation? They went deep into the trees, farther than I'd ever been. Over logs, across patches of frozen mud, through silent clusters of bare branches. Then they stopped, right at a clearing. Nothing there. No person, no structure, no sign of where the tracks went, just a small, cold indentation in the snow where someone had stood still for a long time. A watching place, a waiting place. I backed away slowly. I didn't run until I reached the edge of the neighborhood. By the time I got home, my breath was steaming the air and my hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice. I tried telling myself it was coincidence. Someone on a winter hike, some random stranger. Not him, not the man from that night. But deep down, in the quiet part of my mind that still remembered that long black coat and the beaked mask, I knew better. Nothing that follows you once really leaves. It just waits. By my senior year, I was tired of fear, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of letting a childhood memory dictate my thoughts. I told myself I needed closure, something logical, something grounded. I didn't get that. Instead, I got the truth, and it was worse than anything I'd imagined. It started with a call from Leo. "Dude," he said breathlessly, "I need you to come to my house now." "What's wrong?" "Just get here." His voice cracked the way it had the night we were kids running through the snow. I drove over fast. When he opened the door, his face was pale. "You're not going to believe this," he said. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a photo, blurry, taken through blinds or from behind a curtain. It showed me, walking up my driveway 2 nights earlier. The caption, "Still walk the same." My stomach clenched. "Who sent this?" I asked. "Unknown number," Leo whispered. "They texted me again." He handed me the phone. "Halloween soon. Missed you 3. I swallowed hard. "You think it's him?" Leo nodded. "Who else would it be?" Fear washed over me, cold, slow, and suffocating. "We need to tell someone," I said. Leo shook his head. "And say what? That a guy from 6 years ago is texting me creepy stuff? They won't take it seriously." Maybe he was right. Or maybe we were just scared of the same thing that kept us silent as kids, adults not believing us. I went home that night feeling watched, not just paranoid, observed. Like someone stood somewhere just out of sight, waiting for the right second to step into view. Halloween came fast. Too fast. That year, snow fell again, not as heavy as before, but steady. Familiar. Wrong. Kids still went out trick-or-treating. Parents still laughed and took pictures. But to me, every shadow looked shaped like a long coat. Every person in a mask felt like danger. At 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. I froze. A kid's voice yelled, "Trick or treat!" Relief flooded me. I grabbed the candy bowl and opened the door. 3 kids stood there dressed as superheroes, giggling. Behind them, across the street, under a street lamp, a tall figure, long coat, beaked mask, snow gathering on his shoulders like before. I blinked. Gone. Just gone. The kids ran off. My heart hammered against my ribs. I shut the door and locked it. Later that night, I checked the basement freezer again. The mask I'd found before, still there, but something new had been added beside it, a folded piece of paper. I reached in with shaking hands and opened it. Inside, in careful handwriting, "I never left. Snow makes everything easier. You were right to run." That was the moment everything clicked. The knock on our door that night, the mask in our freezer, the footprints that always vanished into the woods, the years of silence followed by sudden contact. He hadn't been a ghost. He hadn't been a memory. He'd been watching, waiting, returning when the world was white enough to hide in. I pressed the note to my chest and sank onto the basement stairs, breathing fast. Then I heard something upstairs. A slow, heavy step. Then another. My hands went ice cold. Someone was in the house. I should have called the police, should have yelled for my parents, should have done anything except what I did. I crept upstairs. Every instinct screamed to turn around, but something pulled me forward, the need to confront whatever had stalked me all these years. The hallway was dark except for the bathroom nightlight. Snow filtered through the window, casting the house in pale blue shadows. Another step sounded. From the living room I moved closer. My heart thudded so loud I swore the whole house could hear it. At the entrance to the living room I stopped. A tall silhouette stood near the window, long coat, heavy boots, a mask. No, not the plague doctor mask, a ski mask. "What are you doing in my house?" I croaked, voice barely working. The man turned slowly. In his hand was a crowbar. My breath vanished. "Who are you?" I whispered. He took one step toward me. "You kept the mask," he said in a rough voice. My stomach twisted. "What mask?" "The one from the freezer." My mind spun. "You put that there?" "Of course I did." His breathing was shaky, erratic. "I needed you to remember me." "Why us?" I asked. "Why that night?" He tilted his head like the plague doctor had done, almost the same gesture, too similar. My blood froze. "I watched kids every year," he said. "Most parents weren't paying attention. Most kids didn't notice me. But you three, you saw me." My mouth went dry. "So you followed us?" He gave a small nod. "And you ran. Nobody else ever ran." "You scared us," I said, voice cracking. "I wasn't trying to," he said softly. "Not at first. I just liked the quiet, the snow, the costumes, being unseen. But when you boys ran," his voice deepened. "It became something else. My knees felt weak. We were 11. I know," he said calmly. "That's why I didn't come inside." A chill raced down my spine. He had wanted to. "So why now?" I whispered. He looked at my window. It snowed this year. That simple, that horrifying. He took another step, and then a voice behind me shouted, "Police! Drop it!" Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. My dad must have called them when he heard footsteps. Officers rushed inside, tackled the man, wrestled the crowbar from his hands. He screamed, not angry, but desperate. "You kept the mask!" He yelled at me as they dragged him away. "You kept it!" I collapsed to the floor, shaking so hard I couldn't breathe. One officer knelt beside me. "Kid," he said gently, "do you know who that is?" I shook my head. "He's a drifter, been seen across 3 counties, break-ins, trespassing always during storms. He got into a house last winter. Family found him watching them sleep." My stomach turned. "You're lucky," the officer added. "You've been lucky for years." They took him away. I watched through the window as the snow swallowed the flashing lights. In the morning, the police searched the woods. They found a small campsite, old food containers, a pile of coats and masks. One coat, the long black one, still had snow frozen onto it. He'd kept everything. He'd kept us. I called Leo as the sun rose. "It's over," I told him. "You sure?" he asked quietly. I looked out at the woods. No footprints, no shadows, no beaked mask waiting in silence. "Yeah," I said. "I'm finally sure." But even now, every Halloween, even the warm ones, I still glance toward the woods, just in case. Pay attention to what feels wrong, even if it seems small. Trust your instincts. And most importantly, danger doesn't always arrive with noise or warnings. Sometimes it walks slowly, quietly, and waits for you to ignore the signs. I don't talk much about Ridge Hollow anymore. Not because I'm scared of the memories. Fear has a way of dulling over the years. But because when you tell people what happened, they look at you like you're still that 12-year-old kid, trembling in the dark with his best friend, convinced the world outside the window was bending in ways it shouldn't. Back then, life was simple. I lived on Cherry Ridge Road, a quiet loop just outside of town with a gas station, a bait shop, 2 churches, and more cornfields than any kid could reasonably appreciate. Ridge Hollow wasn't a bad place to grow up. It just had a reputation for things that didn't fit neatly into a sheriff's report. Strange lights in the woods. Coyotes that didn't sound like coyotes. Stories older folks whispered when they thought kids were asleep. Caleb and I didn't care about any of that. We were too busy building tree forts, racing our bikes down abandoned logging roads, and trying to convince the girls at school that we weren't complete idiots. We were best friends, the kind who'd argue over which action hero could beat the other but would still share 1 bag of chips at lunch. He lived in an old white farmhouse that sat on the edge of a narrow valley everyone called the Hollow. The place looked like something out of a postcard if you ignored the sagging porch and the wind chimes that clanged even without wind. His family had been there for generations, and his dad always said the house had personality, which was a polite way of saying the floors groaned like an exasperated ghost, and the walls made noises no drywall should ever make. The year everything happened, Caleb's parents were celebrating their 10th anniversary and planned a weekend trip to Columbus. They asked if he wanted to stay with my family, but he insisted he was old enough to handle one night alone, as long as I came over. I didn't hesitate. A sleepover without adults? Horror movies, junk food, staying up as late as we wanted? It was everything 12-year-old boys lived for. I remember the Friday afternoon vividly. The air smelled like rain, even though the sky stayed stubbornly clear, and the wheat fields shimmered in the sun as my mom dropped me off. Caleb greeted me on the porch holding 2 grocery bags, soda, gummy worms, microwave popcorn, and a stack of VHS tapes he'd begged his older cousin to rent for us. He always went overboard, but that was part of his charm. "Dude," he said, grinning wide, "this is going to be the greatest night of our lives." "I mean, unless we discover buried treasure or become astronauts," I joked, stepping inside. "Nope. Not even astronauts beat a parent-free house." We lugged our sleeping bags into the living room and started building a pillow fort. His house always felt a little colder than it should have, even with the furnace running. But I figured old places were like that, drafty, stubborn, alive in their own strange way. At some point, Caleb mentioned the back door. "Triple locked it," he said proudly, jamming a broom handle under the knob. "Dad says this place shifts at night, and sometimes the door pops open on its own, but not tonight. I got it handled." I laughed, not thinking anything of it. If you'd asked me then whether I believed in anything spooky, I would have said no. Life was rational, predictable, safe, especially with Caleb around. I didn't know that sometimes safety vanished, not with a scream, but with a whisper, and I didn't know that the Hollow kept secrets the way old trees keep scars. Quietly, patiently, waiting for the right moment to show them. Night fell quickly, the way it always did in the valley. We started our first movie around 9. The room lit only by the TV's flicker and a cluster of glow sticks we'd cracked open and taped to our fort like neon battle flags. By 11, we were half asleep, half wired, and entirely convinced that nothing in the world could bother us. But it wasn't the horror movies that unsettled us. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the old house settling. It was the moment, just past midnight, when the back door handle began to turn, even though it should have been impossible. It was the moment my childhood ended. The first sound was soft. So soft that for a second I thought it was part of the movie. A gentle metal rattle, a click, then another. Caleb hit pause so suddenly the remote clattered to the floor. We both stared at each other. "Was that?" I whispered. "The back door." He whispered back, voice shrinking. We didn't move, didn't even breathe. The sound came again, slow, deliberate twisting, metal on metal, as if someone was testing the lock with patient, experienced hands. Caleb swallowed hard. "It's probably the house shifting," he muttered, though everything in his face betrayed how little he believed that the broom he'd wedged under the doorknob trembled visibly. "Dude, someone's trying to get in," I whispered. He shook his head. "No way. The porch light's been busted for months. Nobody would even see the door out there." Which was exactly the problem. The window beside the door showed nothing but darkness, pure black, thick and impenetrable, like the outside world had been erased. I stepped closer, cautious, and tried peering through. My breath fogged the glass. Beyond that, nothing. Just absence. The doorknob stilled. Silence swallowed the room. Then came the taps. Not on the back door. On the dining room window. 3 soft knocks. Measured. Deliberate. And worst of all, 6 feet off the ground. Caleb grabbed my arm so tight it hurt. "That's not funny, man." "I'm not doing anything." We backed away from the window, retreating toward the staircase like animals sensing a predator. The knocking didn't come again. Instead, the front motion sensor, the one Caleb's dad had installed because raccoons kept getting into the trash, flicked on. A burst of bright white light filled the front porch, visible through the living room window. But nothing was there. No figure, no shadow, no movement, just empty boards and cold air. Caleb whispered, "What if someone's messing with us?" "Who? We live in the middle of nowhere." Finally, instinct overrode curiosity. "Upstairs," I said, grabbing my sleeping bag. "Now." Caleb didn't argue. We bolted up the creaky staircase 2 at a time, slamming ourselves into his attic bedroom. He locked the door, shoved a dresser in front of it, then flicked off the light. The room fell into a bluish haze from the small skylight above his bed. The house groaned beneath us. We couldn't tell if it was footsteps or just our imagination. Our hearts were pounding too loud to tell the difference. Caleb sat cross-legged, clutching a flashlight like a weapon. "You think it's those high school guys?" he asked, his voice trembling. "The ones who egged our mailbox?" "High schoolers don't knock 6 feet off the ground," I said quietly, "or move without setting off the motion sensor. Maybe the sensor's busted. Then why did it turn on?" He didn't answer. Minutes dragged like hours. Every creak became a threat, every shadow a warning. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and we drifted into an uneasy sleep, the flashlight still clutched in Caleb's hand. When dawn finally broke, the house looked painfully normal. Sunlight painted warm stripes across the wooden floor. Birds chirped outside. For a moment, everything felt so safe that we almost convinced ourselves we'd imagined the whole thing. Then we went outside, and everything changed. The morning air was cool and damp, the kind that soaked into your clothes, even on a sunny day. Caleb and I stepped onto the porch hesitantly. Neither of us said it, but we were both thinking the same thing. We had to know. First, we checked the dining room window. The one someone had knocked on the glass was clean. No smudges, no scratches, nothing out of place. We measured with our eyes how high the knocks would have been. 6 feet, maybe a little more. Too high for either of us. Too high for any kid. Maybe too high for most adults, unless they stood on something. Then we turned toward the yard. That's when we saw the marks. Across the dew-covered grass, stretching from the tree line of the woods to the back porch, were pale, chalky drag marks, wide, winding streaks, as if something heavy and dust-covered had been pulled through the yard. "What the?" Caleb murmured. I crouched down and touched one. A faint residue clung to my fingertips, dry, powdery, almost like plaster dust, but the grass beneath wasn't bent or crushed the way it should have been if something heavy had been dragged over it. It looked like the marks were on the grass, not caused by weight but by contact, as if whatever moved had brushed across just the tips of the blades. "Animal?" I said weakly. Caleb snorted. "What kind of animal leaves chalk marks?" We followed the trail back toward the porch. That's when we saw it sitting on the top step. One of our glow sticks from the pillow fort bent perfectly in half, placed neatly like a gift or a warning. My stomach dropped. "I thought these were all inside," I said. "They were." His voice was barely a whisper. "I packed them myself." We looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Someone had been inside the fort. Someone had taken a glow stick, brought it outside, and left it for us to find Caleb, I said quietly. "We should tell your parents." "And say what? That some glow stick-loving giant knocked on our window?" "I'm serious." "So am I." He kicked a rock, frustrated. "They won't believe us, and I don't want them thinking we're babies." "What about the drag marks?" "Grass fungus," he said quickly, too quickly. He didn't believe his own words, but fear makes you grasp whatever explanation lets you sleep at night. We spent the rest of the day pretending things were normal, watching TV, throwing a football around, debating whether we should eat leftover pizza or the cereal his mom left on the counter. The truth loomed silently between us. Something had come out of the woods that night. Something had touched the house. Tried the door. Tapped on the window. Taken something from inside. And it had left those strange white marks behind. When Caleb's parents returned that evening, we said nothing. We didn't want to relive it. We didn't want to sound crazy. We didn't want to explain something we didn't understand ourselves. So we buried it. Or tried to. But Ridge Hollow wasn't done with us, not even close. Life returned to routine, at least on the surface. A week passed, then 2. Schoolwork, chores, baseball practice. Caleb and I pretended everything was fine. We didn't talk about the knocks, the drag marks, or the glow stick. It hung over us like a forgotten punishment, always there, waiting. But the Hollow doesn't forget. The first sign came 3 weeks later. Caleb showed up at school looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were shadowed, and his hands trembled when he tried to open his locker. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said automatically, but the truth cracked through his voice. "Actually, no, not really." We skipped first period and hid behind the bleachers, a place we'd always gone when we didn't want adults listening in. "It happened again," he whispered. My stomach nodded. "What did?" "The knocks. Last night. Same window. Same number. 3. Soft. Just like before." A cold wave rolled through me. "Did you tell your parents?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't think it wants them." He looked up at me, eyes wide and frightened. "I think it wants us." I didn't know how to respond to that. "What about the motion sensor?" I asked. "Did it turn on again?" He shook his head. "Dad fixed it last week, swapped out the bulb and everything. It should have turned on, but didn't. So whatever it is didn't trip it, or knows how to avoid it." We both fell silent. That afternoon, Caleb insisted we go back to his place. He needed to show me something. We rode our bikes hard, our backpacks thumping against our shoulders as we pedaled down the gravel road into the hollow inside his house. He led me straight to the dining room window. "Look," he said, pointing. "There, barely visible unless the sun hit just right, were faint, dusty smudges on the exterior glass, almost like fingerprints but too long, too thin, too Wrong. They're new, he said. I wanted desperately to tell him they were smudges from his dad cleaning the windows, or a trick of the light, or dust from the fields. Anything but what they looked like. What do you think it is? He asked. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, we heard a soft thud upstairs. We froze. Another thud. A slow scraping sound, like something dragging across the attic floor. Caleb's face went white. We locked my bedroom door before we left this morning. Maybe your mom. She's working late. Your dad? He's picking up parts in town. We stood listening, both too scared to move. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Something's in the attic, Caleb whispered. Against every instinct to run, we climbed the stairs, the old wood protesting beneath our feet. At the top, the hallway was silent. His attic bedroom door was not only closed, it was still locked. So what was inside? Caleb's breathing turned shaky. We should check. Are you crazy? Just open the door, please. My hands shook as I turned the key. The door swung open. Nothing. The room sat exactly as we'd left it. Bed unmade, backpack on the floor, baseball glove on the dresser. The only thing out of place was the window. It was cracked open 2 inches. I didn't open that, Caleb whispered. Seriously, I didn't. A gust of wind blew in, carrying the faint smell of the woods, earthy, cold, wrong. Close it, I said immediately. Close it now. We slammed it shut and locked it, but locking the window felt like locking a screen door during a tornado. Pointless, fragile, too little too late. That night, I begged Caleb to come stay at my house, but he refused. It's my fault, he said quietly. Whatever it is, it keeps coming here, not to you. Then we tell your parents. No. If they don't believe us, they'll think I'm losing it. And if they do believe us, he swallowed hard. What if it gets mad? I couldn't argue with fear that raw, that honest, but I had no idea that the worst was still waiting. The final night wasn't stormy. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't scream danger. It was calm, eerily calm, the kind of night where the air feels heavier than it should. Caleb called me around 9 p.m. Can you come over? He asked. Now? Please. My parents were used to me spending time there, so they didn't argue. I rode my bike through the dark, my flashlight beam bouncing across the gravel road. Every crunch of stone beneath my tires felt like a countdown. When I arrived, Caleb was sitting on the porch, knees pulled to his chest. It's inside, he said. What do you mean inside? He motioned for me to follow him into the house. We crept into the living room, and he pointed at the floor vent near the dining room. Listen. At first, I heard nothing but my own pulse in my ears. Then, faintly, something scraped inside the ductwork. Slow, careful, almost curious. Rats? I whispered, though I didn't believe it. He shook his head. Rats don't knock on windows. We backed away. Then the dining room window tapped. Once, twice, 3 times. Soft, polite, as if it were letting us know it was still there. Caleb grabbed my hand. It's not outside anymore, he whispered. It came through the attic. We need to go. He nodded. We didn't bother gathering our stuff. We sprinted to the front door, flung it open, then froze. The chalky marks were back, not in the yard this time. On the porch. Fresh, bright streaks dusted across the boards, leading up to the door frame, curling upward as if something tall had pressed against the wall. Go, I said. Now. We ran. We didn't even grab our bikes. We just tore down the gravel drive barefoot, gravel cutting our soles. Behind us, the porch creaked, not loudly, but enough to know something had shifted weight onto it. The woods at our backs exhaled, As if relieved to finally be rid of us, we reached my house breathless and shaking. My parents believed the fear in our faces, if not the story itself. Police were called. A deputy checked the farmhouse but found nothing unusual. No forced entry, no footprints, nothing disturbed. The white drag marks vanished by morning. The fingerprints on the window were gone. The attic window was shut tight, as if the hollow had swallowed everything back into its shadows. Caleb's parents replaced the locks and installed cameras, but he never spent another night in that house. 3 months later, they moved. We never spoke about that night again. Not to each other, not to anyone. Some experiences don't need retelling. They already live too loudly in the spaces they occupy. Caleb and I stayed friends for years, though life eventually pulled us in different directions. He left Ridge Hollow first, I left later. But whenever we talk, maybe once or twice a year, we avoid one topic with the precision of surgeons. The farmhouse, the glow stick, the chalky marks in the grass, the thing that knocked. We were 12, but we knew what we saw, and we knew something watched us that night. Something that didn't walk like a person, didn't move like an animal, and didn't belong anywhere we could understand. I still think about it sometimes. The soft knocks, the dragging sound in the vents, the way the motion lights stayed dark, and I still wonder what would have happened if we hadn't run. Trust your instincts. Fear is often a warning, not a weakness. Speak up when something feels wrong. Silence may protect your pride, but it never protects your safety. And remember, danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it taps softly, 3 times, on a window you thought was too high to reach. People always talk about childhood as if it's made of sunshine memories, birthday parties, summer breaks, scraped knees, and warm dinners. And sure, I had those moments, but the older I get, the more I realize how much of childhood is shaped by the moments you weren't prepared for, the ones you didn't even know you were supposed to fear. Before the incident with the stranger in our living room, my biggest fear was the dark hallway outside my bedroom, which I insisted held monsters, even though my dad always left the bathroom light on for me. Compared to that, our house felt like a fortress, small, old, and a little creaky, but safe, because my parents were always around, or at least, they usually were. It was a late fall evening when everything changed. I remember the smell of dinner, my mom's chicken casserole, still lingering in the kitchen when the phone rang. It wasn't unusual for our landline to ring, but the way my mom answered it was. Her face went pale the moment she heard who was on the other end. "What? When?" she asked, voice rising sharply. My dad looked up from the table, eyebrows knitting together. "What's wrong?" Mom covered the phone. "It's my mother. They're taking her to the hospital." My dad pushed his chair back. "Get your coat." Mom looked at me. "Honey, we need to go check on Grandma. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Stay inside, okay?" 10 minutes? I repeated, wide-eyed. 10 minutes, she said, kissing my forehead before rushing toward the door. Dad followed, tossing on his jacket. "Lock the door behind us. Don't answer for anyone but us." I nodded. It wasn't the first time they left me alone for a few minutes, but it never felt like this. So rushed, so uncertain. They stepped outside. I locked the door and watched from the window as their car disappeared down the street. The house instantly felt too still. I returned to the kitchen and poked at what was left of my dinner. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I checked the clock twice, then again. After 30 minutes, the house felt different. Not empty, just tense, like it was holding its breath. That's when I heard it, a noise from downstairs. At first it sounded like the soft creak of a floorboard, the kind you hear when someone shifts their weight. Then a full step, slow, deliberate. I froze. "Mom?" I called from the kitchen doorway. Nothing. I took a few hesitant steps toward the stairs, listening. Another sound, a chair sliding across the hardwood floor. My breath caught. "Dad?" Silence again. Then a new sound, raspy breathing. Not loud, but uneven, like someone trying to catch their breath after walking in the cold. The sound came from near the living room vent. Every hair on my body stood on end. I stepped backward slowly. They weren't home. I knew that now with absolute clarity. Someone else was downstairs. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I moved quietly up the stairs, closing my bedroom door behind me. I thought about calling 911, but I didn't know if I'd get in trouble. I was 9. My brain was full of rules I didn't understand and fears I couldn't articulate. Then I saw it. A shadow, passing underneath my bedroom door. Slow, cautious, like whoever was downstairs was moving through the hallway now. The doorknob turned slightly. Just a nudge. Not enough to open it, just enough to test it. I held my breath. Minutes passed. The shadow didn't return. And that's when the house went silent. Suffocatingly silent. That was the moment I realized I wasn't imagining things. Someone was in the house, and they believed I was alone. Fear has a strange way of sharpening your senses. Even as a kid, you can feel when something is fundamentally wrong. I sat on the floor beside my bed, listening for any noise downstairs. For several long minutes, the house remained so quiet, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I'd imagined everything. Then I heard it. A faint thump, followed by the soft scrape of something. Books, pages, being moved. Someone was going through our things. That realization snapped something inside me. My fear mixed with the strange curiosity only a child can have. That reckless belief that maybe if you looked, you'd understand. I inched toward my bedroom door and pressed my ear against it. The noises were clearer now, pages flipping, a creak of the bookshelf settling. "Mom?" I whispered again, even though I knew better. No reply. Heart racing, I unlocked my door as quietly as possible and cracked it open. The hallway was dark, except for the faint glow from the downstairs lamp my parents always left on. I crept down one stair, then another. At the bottom of the staircase, our living room came into view. And that's when I saw him. A man, someone I had never seen before, kneeling by our bookshelf. He wasn't rummaging like a thief, not hurried or chaotic. He was calm, methodical. He ran his fingers along the spines of our photo albums, pulling one free, flipping through it slowly, like he had every right to be there, like he'd been there before. He wore a heavy jacket, damp from the cold, and muddy boots. His hair was messy, graying at the sides. His breathing, raspy and uneven, matched the sound I'd heard near the vent. He turned a page in the photo album, lingering on it. That album only held family pictures, vacations, birthday parties, my preschool graduation. A chill ran through me. I didn't know how long I stood frozen on the stairs, but eventually the man stiffened slightly. He didn't turn around. He simply said, in a calm, almost parental whisper, "You should be asleep." My blood ran cold. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a shout. It sounded familiar, like something someone in the house might say, that somehow made it worse. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the step. I raced up the stairs, ran into my room, slammed the door and locked it. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the lock. Then I hid, wedged myself behind my bed and dresser, heart hammering so loudly I thought he could hear it. Minutes passed, or maybe it was an hour. Every noise in the house became amplified. The wind outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the hallway thermostat. But I never heard footsteps coming upstairs. Never heard my door jiggle again. Never heard anything but the faint creak of the floorboards downstairs. I stayed hidden until the moment my parents' voices boomed through the house. "Hello? Honey? We're home." I bolted from my hiding spot and flung open the door. My mom saw my face first. "What happened? Are you hurt?" The house, I gasped. There was someone downstairs. Their expressions changed instantly, shock melting into fear. Call 911, my dad said. Mom pulled me close while he rushed down the stairs. I saw him, I whispered. But nothing could prepare us for what the police found next. My dad shouted from the living room. Someone was definitely in here. Mom held me tighter. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers swept through the house, their radios crackling softly. One examined the living room while the other walked the perimeter. My dad stood near the window, jaw clenched tight. The officer kneeling by the bookshelf straightened up. Looks like he was looking through your albums, he said. Why? My mom whispered. The officer shook his head. No idea, but he didn't take anything. That confused everyone. A break-in, but nothing stolen? No electronics touched? No wallets missing? Just photo albums disturbed and left open on the floor. Then the other officer called from the dining room. Over here, found the entry point. We rushed to him. He pointed to the window frame, specifically at the latch. It was cracked, bent slightly upward, like someone had forced it open with a tool. My stomach dropped. The stranger didn't just wander in, he broke in. See these muddy prints? The officer said, shining his flashlight near the baseboard's small, smudged boot prints led from the window to the bookshelf. Mom turned pale. My dad pushed both hands through his hair. We were only gone an hour, less than an hour. And he came in almost immediately, the officer said quietly. Those words destroyed the last bit of safety I thought our house had. He had been waiting, or watching, or both. What about upstairs? Dad asked, voice tense. My son said he saw someone, or heard someone. An officer turned to me gently. Can you tell me exactly what you heard? So I did. The footsteps, the chair noise, the breathing near the vent, the shadow under my door, the doorknob turning, and finally, the voice. What did he say to you? The officer asked. I swallowed hard. He said, you should be asleep. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad took 2 steps back, his face collapsing into something I'd never seen before. Helplessness. But the officer didn't look surprised. He looked troubled. Did he move toward you? No. Did he chase you? No. Did he say anything else? No. He nodded slowly, thinking. Sometimes intruders freeze when they realize a kid's awake, he said, or they try to avoid confrontation. You did the right thing hiding. But that explanation felt too simple, too neat, because the way the man spoke wasn't startled or panicked. It was gentle, familiar, like someone who already expected me to be there. The officer finished his notes and stood. We'll patrol the area tonight. You should stay together in one room until we're sure everything's secure. Mom refused to let go of my hand for the next hour. Dad fixed the window latch that same night, double-checked every lock in the house, and installed a second bolt on the front door. But none of it mattered, because the police never found the man, and no one could explain why he went through our family photos, or how long he had been in the house before I noticed him. The house didn't feel the same after that night. It didn't matter how many locks my dad installed or how many lights my mom left on. The place felt violated, like something invisible still lingered in the corners. I couldn't sleep in my room. For weeks, I slept on the floor of my parents' room with a sleeping bag and a nightlight that never turned off. At first, they insisted it was temporary. After a while, they stopped insisting. Every creak in the house became suspicious. Every gust of wind against the siding made my heart jump. Every time the floorboards settled, I imagined footsteps. The police returned twice in the following days to ask more questions, but each time they left with nothing new to report. No fingerprints, one officer said. He probably wore gloves. No camera footage, said another. The neighbors' cameras were blocked by the storm that night. Mom asked, could he come back? The officer hesitated long enough for all of us to hear the truth in the silence before he said, "Unlikely." Unlikely wasn't enough for me. I kept replaying the moment I saw him, the way he knelt calmly, the way he flipped through our photos, the way he whispered that sentence as if it were something he'd said before. "You should be asleep." Why would a stranger say it like that? One afternoon, my dad caught me staring at the living room vent. "You okay, buddy?" he asked. I shook my head. What if he was here before? Dad paused, confused. "What do you mean?" "What if he didn't break the latch that night? What if he broke it earlier? What if he came in before, and we didn't know?" My dad crouched down and looked me directly in the eyes. "Listen to me. That man came in once, only once, and he's never coming back." His words were strong, steady, but his eyes were scared. Later that night, when he thought I was asleep, I overheard him whispering to my mom in the hallway. What if he watched him? What if he knew our schedule? He didn't steal anything. Why? Why go through our pictures? Mom's voice was tight. Maybe he was homeless. Maybe he was confused. No, he wasn't confused. Dad's voice cracked. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Something icy slid down my spine. That conversation replayed in my head for months. Even as life slowly returned to normal, even as I moved back into my bedroom, one thing never left me. The sense that the man hadn't been there to steal. He had been there to see us, our family, our faces, our lives. Like he was memorizing something he thought belonged to him. Years have passed since the night I saw the man by our bookshelf, but time hasn't diluted the memory the way people say it should. Some memories stick because they were dramatic or fast or shocking. This one stuck because of the opposite. The man was calm, quiet, methodical, almost gentle. I've replayed that night in my mind 1,000 times, wondering what would have happened if I'd taken one more step down the stairs, if I'd asked him who he was, if he'd turned around. Part of me is grateful I never saw his face. Another part of me fears I did, and I just don't remember it. My parents never talked about it again after the first year. They replaced the broken latch, bought better locks, even installed a security system. We moved to a new house eventually, one with solid windows and new floors that didn't creak. But I never forgot the way the stranger flipped through our photo album. In college, I came home one Thanksgiving and asked my mom, "Do you think he picked a certain photo? Like he was looking for something?" She froze mid-stir of the mashed potatoes. "I don't want to talk about that," she said softly. I didn't push, but the question haunted me. Some nights I wake up with the sound of slow footsteps in my head, footsteps that aren't real, but close enough to feel they could be. Other nights, I wake to the memory of his whisper. "You should be asleep." He didn't say it in a warning tone. He said it like someone who'd been watching, like someone who'd been waiting for the house to empty, waiting for me to be vulnerable. Even now, decades later, I still sleep with my bedroom door locked. I still check the windows twice. I still keep my photo albums in a safe drawer. And sometimes when I drive past the old neighborhood, I slow down near our former house. The window latch has been repaired, but I wonder if the new family ever hears footsteps, or notices things moved, or feels the presence of someone watching. The police called him a trespasser, a burglar, a random intruder, but that never matched what I saw. Burglars steal things. Random intruders run away when they're caught. Trespassers don't calmly study pictures of people they've never met. No, whoever he wasn't there to take. He was there to remember. And that's the part of childhood I never got back. The knowledge that home is always safe. Because the truth is simple. Sometimes it isn't. Even when nothing is stolen. even when no one is hurt. Even when you're 9 years old and think the world is full of good people. Sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who act like they belong in your living room. Never ignore the instincts that make your skin crawl. Children often sense danger long before adults acknowledge it. And in life, protecting your safety, your home, your boundaries, your peace, will always matter more than pretending everything is fine. Trust your instincts. They exist to keep you alive.